So welcome to this Ready Roundtable, celebrating the inclusive recruitment campaign category, new category for Ready in 2020. And part of a new programme of sharing best practice via the winners and the highly commended entries for everybody to share and to enjoy. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome today Stephen Salmon, Paul Diemer and Chris Dowling, and I'd like to invite them to introduce themselves, and then we're going to have a really good debate, drill down into that really lived experience and also the impact of those steps that you've taken. So without further ado, Chris, do you want to kick us off and introduce yourself?
Of course, thank you so much. So my name's Chris Dowling. I am the graduate recruitment lead at the Financial Conduct Authority. I've been at the FCA for coming up to 9 months, joined during the pandemic. So it's been very interesting, obviously not having met any of my colleagues, but it's excellent to see all the work that can continue to be done within disability inclusion and wider D&I, even during remote working and a pandemic. And thank you so much for the invite to the session today.
Thank you for joining us, Chris. I'm delighted. I'm really looking forward to hearing more, having obviously met you all at the awards in December. And Stephen.
Yeah, hi, so I'm Stephen Salmon. I'm a marketing executive in the talent marketing team at Guidant Global. And then I also have lived experience of disability being a wheelchair user. And my lived experience also includes benefiting from working with an inclusive employer like Guidant Global and being part of the RIDI initiative. So yeah, delighted to share our experiences.
Brilliant, thanks Stephen, and thank you again for all from you and Guidant, but you personally for RIDI. We wouldn't be where we are without that, so thank you. And my fellow exec member, Paul Diemer, joins us today as well.
Thank you, Kay. Good morning, everybody. So my name's Paul Diemer. I work in my day job for NHS employers within the public sector, but as Kate said, I'm also very proud to be a member of the RIDI executive team, and I'm hoping today just to bring some of the public sector experience into the conversation today and hopefully draw some lessons and draw some comparators between the two, and hopefully highlight for people how we can share and learn from each other.
That's brilliant, Paul, and I know always you take that learning straight back to NHS employers, and we get a response, really good response from those employers out there, particularly at this time of need. So final introduction is myself, and many of you listeners will already know me. However, I am the chair and I'm the founder of RIDI. It was my dream to create an inclusive recruitment industry, and as I often say, I can't retire until we do, so please do hurry up, because I'm pushing it now. But my day job is that I'm one of the directors for the Clear Company. We're an inclusive solutions business founded on inclusive recruitment best practice. And as those of you know who hear me speak regularly, I'm a great believer in the golden nuggets and in making sure that employers have nothing in their recruitment processes and practices that means that those golden nuggets don't get through and shine. That's a kind of self-appointed mission in life. So for today, what I'd like to do really is drill down to two things: is the process that you undertook, and again sharing some of that learning, Paul, from the public sector and NHS employers as well, and the impact. I know our listeners and viewers are always really keen to hear, well, what worked? What were the results? And I know listening to both of the case studies here, it wasn't just about attraction, was it? It's about the whole process that's part of that attraction methodology. So, Chris, I don't know if you'd like to start us off with, your view really on what you feel genuinely creates an inclusive recruitment campaign.
Absolutely. So for me, I think authenticity is absolutely key. There are so many people within diversity and inclusion and within disability inclusion from a brand perspective who see it as a tick box exercise. It's just for branding. But for me, you're setting candidates up for failure, because it's not just about inclusion within a recruitment campaign. You then have to embed them within workplace adjustments as well. So I think authenticity and the reasoning why you're doing it is absolutely essential, linked with your culture. I think it's really important to identify that within a recruitment campaign, it's not just the marketing side of things. Essentially, it's from design to implementation. So you have the marketing attraction, digital marketing, but also your assessment centres, how you assess candidates, your keep warm strategy. All of this are absolutely pivotal to your campaign. You can't just see them as an isolated tick box of 1, 2, 3. There is a huge link, and it's so important for you to see that the whole year essentially is a recruitment campaign. It's a marketing site, it's branding, but again, it's that authenticity piece around how can we touch base with candidates and make them feel that we are a really inclusive employer at every stage of their application process, down to when they actually join. So I think for me, it's really important for you to look at your end of campaign review from the previous year, because I want to, in my role and in anyone's role, I think it's important to have a process of continuous improvement, and you can't do that until you see what you've done in previous years. So with us in particular, we work with our ATS to look at what's happening with candidates in particular at certain stages of the application process. And by having an understanding of what's gone on in previous years, you're going to be really in a better position to see what you can do in future years to address them. So having one foot in the past, being data led, to then actually put that in the present so you can make those future adjustments. I also think that it's important to make sure that you're engaging with both internal and external stakeholders. So there'll be many people within and outside the organisation who are specialists in this area. So from an external perspective, you can obviously partner with specialists in recruitment, anyone within diversity, inclusion, and disability, to get the real skills and the tangible stuff that you can implement within your campaign. But also, it's important to work with those who are already in the organisation, because they are role models. There are people who can actually contribute to the content of your recruitment campaign. I think it's really important for people to ask for help. So diversity and inclusion, I think some people can be really scared of, because they don't want to say the wrong thing, they don't want to do the wrong thing. But if you just ignore it, you're going to make no progress whatsoever. So ask for help, upskill yourself in areas within the whole D&I agenda, but with obviously disability in particular pertinent to this conversation. Ask people. You can join your employee network within disability, just to get an understanding. Be an ally. If you're not someone who identifies as disabled, you can still upskill yourself by being an ally and talking to people who do identify. And I think the final point, when it comes to the key components of making a recruitment campaign more inclusive, is if you're part of an organisation who you genuinely, like I said, are either scared of D&I, you're worried about saying the wrong thing, don't have a mentality, it's my own personal advice, of having to improve everything in 1 year, everything in 1 day. If you can prove that you can get the ball rolling with a momentum year on year, that you're implementing some things in the D&I agenda or in disability inclusion, like Rome wasn't built in a day. If you don't already have those skills, don't be afraid to just, don't ignore it completely. Make progress year on year, and then you'll start to get an understanding of not only why is it really important, but actually there is things that you can do and resources that are available that are free as well. So it's not just a financial limit thing around trying to find specialists. There's so much available for you to use already. So that's, I guess, the non-specific around our particular submission. I'm not too sure if you want me to pass on, if you want to go into the details of our particular submission.
I'll pass on, and then I'm going to come back to you, Chris, as you rightly highlight, with the details of your submission, if I may. But there's some really key points there, all of which are very really aligned, actually. So we created a getting started category specifically, if I can emphasise. We do encourage people to start somewhere. Don't put it off because it feels too big, make those smaller steps. And I'm going to leave Stephen to respond. I know that he's got a great deal of experience in this area, and I'm sure he's going to respond on, use of data and reflection and the whole candidate experience and stakeholders and all of that amazing insight from you, Chris. So Stephen, can I invite you to share your thoughts on creating an inclusive recruitment campaign?
Yeah, Anna, I think picking up on the point of it can't just be one campaign, and that's such a small part of it. Chris mentioned culture, and I think as a disabled person, when you're researching for a role, you found a role that you think is ideal for you. You meet the criteria. You soon learn from the initial advertisement whether that company is considering people like you. I think all disabled people would have read job ads before and easily been able to suss that they're not talking to people like me. I'm not on their radar. But equally, that only stands up to a point. If we're looking at retention and offers being accepted for employment, you're not going to stay somewhere where you quickly realise that inclusion isn't a big part of a company's agenda. It's not a tick box exercise. I'm grateful for my experience with Guidant, that I don't feel different to anybody else. I've not been treated any differently. It was just the process of finding the role and being able to apply it in a manner that didn't exclude me, based on having become disabled and having a period of time where obviously dealing with that period of my life of hospital treatment and sort of rebuilding again. A traditional application might not have been accessible for me to account for certain dates. So the whole process and initial interaction with who are now my colleagues, sort of showing that culture, and then obviously the benefits of specific campaigns having a guaranteed interview for somebody with a disability, as long as they meet the minimum criteria. It takes away that initial barrier of disclosure, feeling that could hinder your process. And I think clearly seeing that disability is on the agenda of an employer, that they're actively part of this movement that RID is undertaking. And like we said, there's not a point you'll get to and you can safely say like we're here now, we've done everything. It's a continuous learning experience, and I think there's so many different avenues you can go to get that experience. I think as well, being able to take that learning and put that into our campaigns and trying to make them as inclusive as possible using software such as ReciteMe to be able to be as inclusive to as many people as possible. From a business point of view, it benefits by increasing the talent pool and not having not putting people off of applying, but equally when they come into the business, being able to see that it is genuine. We are proud of being inclusive, and we're reaping the benefits of that, but also being able to advertise that and put that as part of our strategy certainly makes it easier. And I think as well, it's potentially an example of how stripping down some of the processes to making them more inclusive, have wider benefits, not just for one group of people, but for everybody who's potentially applying.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stephen, for that. And I think it's so relatable. And the two of you are talking the same language, aren't you? The themes coming up is authenticity. So if we're authentic and genuine, we're going to look at very practical things that remove barriers and create inclusion. We're not going to just drift into a tick box kind of initiative-led approach. We're genuinely going to commit to doing the things that make a difference. And you've both mentioned internal and external networks and stakeholders, and using the lived experience of those around you to inform that decision making. So I think there's some really positive messages going out to people listening here that it doesn't have to be terribly complicated. What it has to be is authentically driven.
I don't think it is complicated. I think it'd be easy to see difference it'd be easy to find difference in people. I think what's easier though is to realize that despite regardless of differences, that we're all a lot more similar in a lot of ways, but equally diversity, we're better for it, as working with a diverse range of colleagues. Learn, and that's part of the process of becoming more knowledgeable, because I think from sort of going back to that point of being a disabled person looking at an organization, it's easy to to find out when it's not genuine, and even if it's not at an advanced stage, I think you can appreciate when people are working towards, but I think you can quickly suss when it is no more than trying to build up some numbers and there's no real thought going into how this carries on into a long term.
And how it impacts on individuals and businesses. I mean, I know from the FCA entry, it's the little, there was huge partnerships and lots of stuff, Chris, which I'm sure you're going to share with us, but it's those little golden nuggets of meeting people at the tube station to give them the confidence to get to, from there to the interview, are things that, that's achievable for everybody, large, small, experienced, non-experienced, confident, non-confident. Those little things make a big difference though, and that really stood out for me. I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Chris, if I may, but I'm just interested, Paul, so this theme of being genuine, from an NHS and from a public sector perspective, where there is the sort of impact assessments and there's all of that protocol that goes in place. How do you ensure that you get that genuine message out that disability confidence and disability inclusion it is genuinely meant? So please apply, please come to us.
Yeah, no, thanks, Kate. I thought it was fascinating actually that Chris opened the conversation talking about authenticity. I sort of wasn't expecting that somehow. I thought he might come at it from a different angle. But it's absolutely right. And authenticity, as you know, Kate, because it aligns with the RIDI principles, really come from confidence. And you mentioned disability confident, which obviously is a benchmark that we strongly recommend to employers to try and comply with. But confidence comes from training. And for me, that's the importance actually, that organizations don't forget that there's an element of training underneath this as well. And I think this goes to the core of some of what Stephen was saying actually about not just making it very superficial and making sure that it's embedded within the organization. And Stephen mentioned culture as well, the importance of culture. And training, I think in the modern age to a certain degree, and I'm talking as an old person here, sorry, but I think the value of training has been slightly undermined, I think, in recent years. And I think what we've seen actually in the NHS over the last 12 months is actually the value of training and reminding people about the things you talked about, Kate, which is about a values-based organisation and a values-based approach. So that's what we do within the NHS. We talk about taking a values-based approach to recruitment, and not forgetting, just finally to say, not forgetting what Stephen was saying actually, that at the end of the day, recruitment is a human interaction. Yeah, it's a human process. Yeah, it's not a process. it is a human interaction, and that's why that authenticity is so important, because people will see through that. If you've got people on an interview panel who are there just to make up numbers and just targeting a particular group for perhaps the wrong reason, should we say?
Yeah, it's felt instantly, isn't it? It's interesting. I mean, we always say, don't we, at RIDI, that it's not only a human interaction; it's a very important human interaction. Very few people go for an interview and don't tell somebody that they're going for that interview, and then having to let them know how it went when they get back. And certainly for some people, from our disabled community, that's a regular occurrence, and it's something that we need to make into a positive learning experience that ends up with a good career move. Chris, we're here to celebrate, obviously, that winning submission, and I think we'd be really interested in just hearing that, what you feel the key points were that made that such a successful campaign. And it's an ongoing campaign; it wasn't a one-off, so that's all part of it as well. Just top 3 learning points that you could share that other people could pick up on and implement.
Of course. So I think top 3 learning points. Data-led is absolutely pivotal, because there's no point trying to experiment if you don't have the kind of KPIs that are going to come from it. So as an example, which is kind of like an interesting example I'll use, because I guess you'll see where I'm coming from. So with the disability confidence scheme, obviously if you fit a certain criteria, you can go straight towards the have a first round interview. Now within the FCA, we trialed this and it hasn't worked for us. And when I say it hasn't worked for us, it hasn't worked for us and candidates. So there will be certain initiatives that you don't just need to adopt, you need to see if they work for everyone as well. So as an example, with this particular scenario, as there are prerequisite things before the interview that you have to do. So we have online tests, and we also have the career motivational questions. If we were to put someone through the Disability Confidence Scheme and have their telephone interview, if they were to pass the interview, they would still need to do the steps beforehand. And we found that by implementing the Disability Confidence Scheme, it was disadvantaging disabled candidates, because actually by doing the motivational questions and the tests first, you're actually learning a lot more about the employer. So when you do have your interview, you are so much more prepared because you've gone on that journey of having to research why you want to work for the firm. So I think the first key learning I'd say is be data driven. Look at your previous campaigns year on year and make sure that when you are implementing things, you aren't just doing it for the sake of trying to tick a box. Do they work for you, and do they work for disabled applicants? That's point number one. I'd say point number two is role modelling. I think it's absolutely essential that when you are saying that you're a disability confident employer, or you want to engage with more disabled candidates, is that you show them that there are people like them that work in the organisation already. Role modelling within D&I in general is absolutely pivotal, because if you can see someone like you who is working there, you think, well, actually they're doing it, so I can. If you have poor representation, there's going to be no empathy when you actually work in the organisation, or you're going to feel like you can't work there. So for me, when I applied for the job, I actually applied through the Disability Confidence Scheme myself, and straight away it made me go, if there's a relief. You think, oh goodness me, they are committed to it. Not just from a brand angle, but when you see accolades, when you see awards, when you see like physical things, you're attracted to it. It's something which is really, really important. And I think the third thing, I'm trying to look for my notes, what I would say, we've got role models, we've got data. The third thing I would say, I'd say external support as well. So you are limited in-house, because a lot of the work that people do within HR is obviously from a legal perspective. There is the culture side as well, but I kind of see disability inclusion as there's the legal obligation, but there is also a actual wholehearted, authentic obligation. So with that in mind, there'll be people who work internally within networks who aren't paid to do that. They're doing it off the benefit of the goodness of their own back. So you're going to have role models. Use your knowledge in-house, but because people aren't always paid internally to make things happen, actually pay to have a specialist involved, because they're going to be the ones to train everyone internally to get you up to scratch, to get you looking at benchmarking. So I think never be afraid to go external, because they're going to have such a big value add to not only submissions if you're doing things like awards, but from in creating an inclusive, genuine, authentic environment. Go external, because then you could embed the learnings internally.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Chris. Really interesting points there. I'm sure Stephen's going to want to come back on in a second. It's interesting that both of these entries do partner with external specialists, and people that support disabled candidates can access people and support people through the recruitment process as well. So I think that's quite an interesting observation. Don't get me started on the guaranteed interview scheme, because everybody knows where I sit on that. But it's about interpretation. So the way Guidant have interpreted and used it has worked for them. It's if you just think, well, I've ticked the box and I've guaranteed an interview, therefore I can become disability confident. I think you're right. It just kicks in later down the line if you haven't done all the other stuff that Guidant have done. Just conscious of time, and we've shared a lot already. But Stephen, I'm really keen to hear from you. You know, your entry. I know that you partner with WizKids amongst others, and you know, Disability Confident has been part of Guidant Group's core culture for many years now. They're a gold partner with RIDI, and they've been so supportive. But for you, what would be your top three? You know, if it doesn't matter if there's only one, but you know, just those top core things that somebody can, listening to this, can say, right, okay, I can grab that, I can do that.
Yeah, I think certainly on the point of sharing experience, but equally, so internally we have an influence program where we mark all different dates for different groups. But we don't only share that internally, so we have the internal learning. So I think that's a real big part, especially when it comes to the culture, is that we're all more understanding of our colleagues. We're all more aware of, particularly with disability, I think that we're all more aware of the specific challenges faced by people with varying impairments, because my disability as a wheelchair user is very different. As a manual wheelchair user is very different to the challenges faced by a powered wheelchair user. But being able to share those experiences and then being able to turn them into blogs, have them on our website, on our Work For Us page, so that when somebody is looking, that it isn't just, they're not just looking and seeing that I'm guaranteed an interview if I meet the, there's got to be the, do I want to work with these people? Do I want to work for this organization? And I suppose being able to share some lived experience offers that insight to somebody coming into seeing, there is somebody like me, or somebody maybe a little bit more like me who is able to thrive in this organization. I think with our partnerships with WizKids and with RIDI, the opportunity to meet with people from different backgrounds at different stages of the journey, especially with WizKids, being able to meet young people who are able to give you their insight of the challenges they're facing, and also to give back to them as well, to be able to show our example, to maybe restore a little bit of faith within them that it isn't just going to be hurdle after hurdle that needs negotiating, that there are examples, and we always point out that we're not standalone, we're not the only organization on this journey. And I suppose having the example of RIDI and being able to list all the partners and be able to share the different sectors that are all part of this journey. But I think probably the following on from what Chris was saying, I think definitely the lived experience, being able to share that, set the example, is really important internally and externally.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. And personally couldn't agree more. And as Paul knows, it's totally aligned as you do, because you do a lot of the work for us, aligned with RIDI values and the messages. And those blogs from Guidant are shared by RIDI on Twitter regularly. So keep your eyes on that social media campaign, because they're really good to read. So Paul, any sort of final points from you before we wrap up?
Just a couple of things actually that have been triggered from Chris and Stephen's input. So I've always, I've worked in HR, Kate, as you know, all my life. Actually, I'm a career HR person. So I've always said that the interview shouldn't be an exam or a test. Yeah, the interview should be, it's almost like a meeting place, really, where you have the employer is trying to sell themselves to the candidate, and the candidate is trying to sell themselves to the employer. And some of the ways that we're trying to do that now within the NHS is actually trying to take that sort of test element out of the interview. So things that we're doing, for example, are we're sending candidates questions before the interview. Yeah, so because we know what the questions are, because we all prepare for them. As we've done today, we've got questions, we know what we're going to ask. And we've even, within the interview process, you've got set responses as well. So why not send the candidates the questions in advance so that they can be prepared and as comfortable as possible? The other thing, actually, a couple of trusts are trying at the moment and doing, is also inviting candidates to send in pre-recorded interviews. So again, so they send them the questions and they'll say, can you record an interview on Zoom or Teams on the basis of these questions, and send it in to us. So you've got that pre-recorded thing. So people again can feel comfortable, relaxed, do it in their own time, so those sorts of things. And all of that, I think, just sort of bears out, I think, what Chris and Stephen said, which is about, this is about making the process as human and as interpersonal and authentic as possible, actually. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think the important point Stephen made was the reference to networks. So if you can involve your networks as well in the process somewhere, I think that will help, because that again gives people confidence that there is authenticity behind it.
Brilliant. It's interesting. I mean, you know, right at the beginning of my career, I always had this mantra, which was recruit in versus recruit out. And, you know, I always go for a recruit in style of assessment. So let's give somebody every single opportunity available to us to show us how brilliant they are, as opposed to let's trip everybody up at every available opportunity to lose that potential. So, yeah, absolutely on message there. I'm conscious of time. You've all shared a great deal, but I'm sure that you've got some golden nuggets that you want to share. So if I just go to each of you in turn, you know, lasting comments on, you know, your RIDI submission, the importance of what you've done, and that lasting message to land with the audience. I'll start with you, Chris, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess what I would say in terms of our future submissions and the work that we're doing is that this year we've actually reallocated all of my campus budget to do diversity and inclusion initiatives. And in terms of what we've done this year, so we've actually implemented neurodiversity training for all of our early careers assessors. And what this means is that when you're an assessing candidate, you're already trying to eliminate that natural bias of things that historically in HR you're told to do, like, oh, have they got good eye contact? Have they got this? We're trying to dispel the myths. You don't need to assess based on that. And also, we've done a video on reasonable adjustments, so making sure that people are aware of what they are, how they can get them, and how that links to workplace adjustments. So just as kind of a lasting point, we're really proud to say that our pipelines are closed for our early careers roles. And this year we've actually seen a 261% increase in applications from disabled candidates. So we've used COVID as a real driver to see where we can use funds differently within D&I and within in disability. And again, being data-led, we've already seen close to 300% in just the brand piece of people applying. So we're really trying to use COVID, because obviously it could potentially be going on for a lot longer, as an opportunity for you to see how this is likely to impact disabled candidates or anyone applying, or even within the organisation, and use their input and special input to see what you can use COVID as an opportunity to improve on your disability inclusion.
That's just awesome. I'm just, wow. You may have seen the roundtable that Paul and I did with some other exec members towards the end of last year, where we're talking about COVID as an opportunity. Let's use that opportunity. It's to some extent leveled the playing field. For others, clearly it's made that difference greater, but where there's an opportunity, let's use it. It's great going out on campus, it's just there's nobody there. So the virtual campus reaches more people, doesn't it? But favour to ask, Chris, the couple of things you mentioned there, which was around the neurodiversity training and your workplace adjustments video. I think from a RIDI perspective, we'd be really keen on tracking the impact of those, and also learning maybe some more, so we could share who's done that with you, and then others could use that. It'd be brilliant.
Absolutely.
Stephen, final word from you, if I may.
Yeah, so I think education is the key, and that once again comes back to the partnerships. You know, continuous learning. We're never gonna, you know, there isn't a point where you can say there's not a top of the mountain. It's a continuous, things will change, and hopefully as the world opens up to more people and becomes more inclusive, there's gonna be a lot more learning to do. We've recently produced a blog on how obviously the challenges of last year will have had an impact on, you know, on disabled people in particular, but obviously now the world of work has changed. 2021 should be the year that we gain much more momentum. Flexible working isn't now only for a few. This is flexible working is, you know, something that now affects everybody. We're all seeing the benefits where they are. It's not always easy, and it's not going to appeal to everybody. We've got to make sure that we don't now push disabled people into remote working as an only option. Yeah. But it should open up opportunities to people who do need a bit more flexibility because of the pandemic and the changes that have had to be implemented. We've also partnered with Podium through the Ability People, so tapping into freelancers, and you know that's already come with success. And there's posts on the RIDI social channels about guidance specific experience with Podium. So I think, yeah, the continuous learning, the constant upskilling of ourselves, and embracing what the future has as we step away from the harsher lockdowns, but as we start to build back. I've said in the blog, you know, we only build back better if we have inclusion at a genuine inclusion strategy at the heart of that. And if we don't take this opportunity now, because this is as close as we're going to come to a hard restart of working and recruitment practices, if we don't use this opportunity now to implement a lot of what we've been talking about at RIDI and, you know, and working on, now's the opportunity for more people to get on board, and make sure that we take the negative impact and we're able to pull some positives out of that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Stephen. And I love that point of, you know, it's all very well that we can use flexible working, home working, distance working technology to support our disabled colleagues, but let it not be a default of therefore we just assume they're not in the office. I think that's a really valid point alongside all the other valid points that were made today. So I'm going to close with big thanks to our panel, to Paul, to Chris and to Stephen. I'm just in line with that, you know, key message around authenticity. RIDI is authentic. There's lots of partners, there's lots of support. Most of it, if not all of it, free. So please do tap into all of that. This is part of a roundtable series, so do log on to ridi.org.uk and sign up for the newsletter, sign up for these roundtables. And also, coincidentally, the next Clear Company Free diversity forum in March is on flexible working and making adjustments and bringing people back into work, with some expert advisors coming in to support that. So if you visit the Clear Company website, then you'll be able to access that as another free resource and network opportunity for you. But I'm looking forward to those submissions from Guide and from FCA and from all of you listening. Next year. We are running the awards this year. We assumed 2020 just didn't happen. So yeah, awards in 2021 will be in December again. So keep an eye on the website. We'll be launching those mid-year. So get your submissions prepped. Massive thank you, loads of learning. Thanks, Paul, for bringing that extra perspective. Really keen also to these virtual interviews, these pre-recorded interviews. That's another one that'd be really interesting to track. In terms of impact, so we can share that learning out again as well. So thank you all very much, and that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.